This is the second part of our Muddy River News This Week series. We're talking to the mayoral candidates, and this time I'm talking with independent candidate Linda Moore. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Why are you doing this?
Why not?
I should just move on to the next question then?
Seriously, yeah. Why not?
Okay.
Because
you'd never been involved in politics until you came back here, right?
No. I did go to the Women's Campaign School at Yale Law School in 2013. Mm-hmm. At the time, my executive coach said, hey, this would be a great leadership opportunity. I said, I'm not interested in politics, no way. But she said it'd be a good leadership opportunity for me, so I went. It was a week-long program. I learned more about our American political system than I think I ever wanted to know.
Okay.
But the best part of that was there were 73 students. About a third were either independent or international or unaffiliated. A third were Republicans, a third were Democrats, and a lot of these women had gone toe-to-toe in races. Mm-hmm. But we all worked together, and that I thought was pretty cool. But I really had no intention of ever getting into politics.
And here we are.
And here we are. The other thing I'll say is I really wanted to inspire other good people to run for office. And I thought, you know what, if I'm asking them, maybe I should step up and be an example. So I decided, why not? After both candidates had asked me to be on their senior leadership team, I decided, you know what, if I'm going to work that hard, I might as well run for mayor.
So let's talk about the campaign in and of itself.
Sure.
This is really the first time. How's it going? And what's the hardest part?
Actually, it's gone pretty well, I think. The hardest part has been running as an independent. You don't have a party machine behind you. Mm-hmm. So you have to recruit all the volunteers yourself. You have to do all the fundraising yourself. There's a lot of things that you have to do that a party would help you do, and I didn't have that party behind me to do it. So that's probably been the hardest part, but I've never shied away from hard work.
And you talked about getting help from the Republican or the Democratic mm-hmm. Party. You oftentimes also get financial support.
Correct.
Talk a little bit about mm-hmm. where your support has mm-hmm. been coming from.
Sure. 61% has been from residents mm-hmm. in the city of Quincy. I have about 9% that has been from fundraising events that has been attended by people from Quincy. Right. So 70% overall from the city. Then I have about 17% that comes from PACs or unions that represent our city workers, mm-hmm. either workers from the city as an organization or workers throughout the city of Quincy. Mm-hmm. Then the other 8% or whatever is left has been from former colleagues and family around the country.
All right. Let's talk about your time around the country. Full disclosure, I knew of you when you were just finishing up school at Quincy University. Mm-hmm. I was just getting started, but you went on to a career with ESPN. Tell me, is there something that you learned during your time at ESPN that can't count the political event that you went to in 2013? Mm-hmm. Something that you learned from your time there that you will use if you were to be elected mayor?
A lot of things. ESPN was the little engine that could. Mm-hmm. As I was growing with it. There? I started in 1996, October 1st of 96.
That was probably about the time that was really for the first time starting to become a true power.
Right. Before that, they operated out of trailers and, mm-hmm. It was how many people can we get into a single wide, By the time I got there, we had people all over the country covering events. We had a lot of contracts for major content. Rights fees were starting to go up, so they realized, hey, we need to create our own content because then we're not paying rights fees. Right. So that's how the X Games came about. It started out as the Extreme Games on the back of a napkin at a Capitol Grill.
Okay.
So my executive vice president, it was his brainchild, and he brought a really good friend of mine from St. Louis who I worked with at the Olympic Festival mm-hmm. in '94 in St. Louis. So Jack got it started. After I was finished in Atlanta at the Olympics, he called me and he said, I've got a job for you in San Diego on the beach. It might be beneath you, but it's on the beach in San Diego. So I said, 2 years sounds pretty good to me.
Right.
So I moved cross country, went to San Diego. I was the participant services manager, which was a glorified athlete babysitter.
Okay.
And at that point, the competitors, I wouldn't necessarily use the term athletes. They were misunderstood, troubled children who had a lot of talent in skateboarding, BMX, and similar sports. Well, I housed them, I fed them, I was in charge of catering, hospitality, credentials, registration for the athletes, prize money, which meant they weren't going to get their prize money if they didn't follow my rules. So they very quickly learned. So you really were like
a house mother.
I was the house mom, exactly. I grew to love them. You know, I have stories about, you know, these aren't people I would have normally ever associated with, but if you listen to them and try to understand and try to walk in their shoes, then you really grow to love them. Yeah. And that's exactly what I did. And I think that's a trait that I carried through my whole career, but also here in Quincy. I think until you really sit down and listen to someone, hear their story, and actually try to walk in their shoes, do you really understand their side of the story? And I think you make better decisions when you understand both sides.
Okay.
So,
your campaign slogan, fix what's broken. What's broken and how would you fix it?
Sure. Well, there are several things that are broken. Everybody's heard me talk about the P word, the potholes. You know, we have them all over town. And I just learned today that Tesla actually has a program that with all their self-driving cars, you can, if you're a Tesla owner, of course, you can go and you can find out where all the potholes are. I thought, what a novel concept. They need to share that now with the local level, because once you know where all the potholes are, it's really easy to just, you know, use the grid system and fix them all. Of course, you've got eyesight so you can see them, but we could find the worst roads pretty quickly. So I think I'll call Elon and say, hey, what can you do to help us?
Is he on your phone?
No, but
somebody on your phone might be able to get Elon with one try.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I did get an invitation to a dinner with Donald Trump, though.
You did?
So, yes, just last week.
Did you
I haven't accepted it
RSVP?
yet. I haven't accepted yet.
All right.
I'm not sure I have enough zeros in my checkbook, but you know, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. So, you know, potholes, that's number one, of course. Number two, I think we have to look at our streets and roads and infrastructure overall. You know, there's some potholes on some streets we can simply patch, and that's good enough because we're going to tear up the road in a year or two anyway. So, you know, for the pipes and everything underground. There are some roads that we've already done the underground work, so we need to really fix those patches right. Then there will be other roads that, you know, we're going to get to it in about 5 years, but maybe it's not really that bad, but maybe we could resurface it in a year. So we have to figure out of our infrastructure budget, how much do we spend on potholes? How much do we spend on resurfacing roads? How much do we spend on rebuilding roads? Excuse me. And figure out a formula that way to get the most impact and the most bang for our buck. Other things that I think we need to fix, right now we're negotiating for the new air service out at the airport. Well, there's a lobbyist loophole that allows us to not be required to have an ARF unit out at the airport to provide firefighting service in the event of a crash. My feeling is anybody who knows someone who was on that plane in 1996 understands the importance of having ARF at the airport. Firefighters this morning told me it's about $100,000 a year. Well, $100,000 sounds like a lot, but if your loved one flies in and out of the Quincy airport, I think $100,000 is a pretty cheap price tag.
Sure.
We need to find that $100,000, put it in the budget, and provide ARF service, no matter what the FAA says. And we don't know, of course, what the FAA is going to come back and say, but I don't think that's a loophole we want to follow. So I think that's another thing. The third thing is probably the culture at City Hall. And I think that's probably the most important thing, because that just spreads. And when you have a toxic culture, it just spreads throughout the organization and throughout the city. There's a lack of trust, there's a lack of confidence in leadership, and I think we need to build that back. First thing I would do is start with the aldermen and building relationships with the aldermen.
And how would you do that?
And they're important. Well, listening. Sitting down, listening to them, finding out what their priorities are for their ward, and helping them achieve those priorities for their ward. You know, so that's number one. Number two, I think there's a lot of aldermen who would like to see us cut the spending. You know, as one said not too long ago, we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. And so we need to get our arms around that. Our taxpayers want services delivered, especially the essential services.
Right.
We need to figure out, how do we deliver these essential services with a smaller budget? It's going to mean we've got to think outside the box. It's going to mean we've got to think differently. We can't do things the way we've always done things, because that hasn't worked. Our expenses are growing at a pace much faster than our revenues, so that gap is going to keep getting wider. I'm not as worried about 2026 as I am about 27, 28, and 29.
Okay.
So we have to take action now that's going to set us up for a sustainable future.
One of the things that I know that Mike Trope has said, he says, well, we've had a $50 million budget for each of the last 4 years. Are you suggesting either A, a smaller budget, or B, keeping that budget in the 50 million mark, but just having fewer expenditures?
Well, our revenues have been $50 million. Right. Our expenses have been as much as $60 million. To me, that's a shortfall. Now, some of that money has been that we've transferred it out to other funds, but it's still a shortfall, you know. So we have to find a way to narrow that gap.
What about the roads? Again, he has said that the amount of money that has been spent on roads annually has gone from around 3.4 million to 12.7 million. Are you suggesting that the 12.7 million isn't enough to fix the roads, or it needs to be reallocated in a different way? He's obviously throwing money at it.
Right. But would you say our roads have all been fixed, even though we spent six times the amount of money? Most people won't.
Well, to me, here's my official pitch. Hampshire, from about 10th to 6th, I might drive on it every day to come to work, but holy cow. So until that road gets fixed, then none of the roads in Quincy are fixed, because that's my personal favorite.
Exactly.
And I'm sure everybody has their personal favorite.
Oh, yeah. I do believe 10th to 8th is on the list and is coming up just very soon.
Keep going down the street.
I'm not sure how far west we're going, but I do know it's on there. Next year, there's $18 million in projects on the list that was presented Monday night. So, you know, now next year it's 18 million, but how many blocks is that? And I've always been I've been big about optics. What does it look like? Well, if 18 million does 10 city blocks, it's not going to make a difference to most people. If $18 million does 75 blocks, then all of a sudden people are saying, hey, we're making progress. It's the same amount of money, but it's used and reallocated differently to get more bang for our buck. Now, we do have to coordinate this, because we know we've got to start underground. We've got pipes that we have to replace. Some of the pipes that are, 125 years old need to be replaced. But just because they're 125 years old doesn't mean they absolutely need to be replaced, because some of them, if they've lasted that long, they could last that much longer. So we really need to be strategic about how we spend our money. And I think that's something that's missing. It's inherent in politics, I think, because every 4 or 8 years you could have somebody new in charge and they have a whole new vision. I'd like to see us set up a sustainable model that's sustainable no matter who's the mayor.
Mike Trope had said back when we talked back in the primary that the biggest issue facing the city is housing. What do you think the biggest issue facing the city is?
Culture. You fix culture, everything else follows. But housing is a crisis situation. about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I, started reading all these articles, and we started hearing in the news about the housing situation. And I just felt like I had to do something. I didn't know what the answer was, but I had to do something. So I got involved with a couple of groups. One was Housing Solutions Quincy. Basically, we raise money to buy homes for the YWCA. The YWCA uses it for transitional housing for their clients. Right. Works out great. We're fundraisers. But that was a way to help. I'm also working with another group called Quincy Builds. They're putting together a model that could be an investment group, maybe a real estate investment trust. Maybe it's going to be something slightly different, but it's a way to get involved and get houses back in the market quicker than what we're seeing right now. And of course, I've also met a lot of builders and a lot of developers that want to get involved and want to do their piece. So we have all these different entities who are doing little pieces. We need to get them together in a strategic task force to say, okay, the United Way has given us a housing study. We know this is what we need by this year. So we need affordable, we need to take care of the homeless, we need to take care of the senior market, we need luxury, all the different types of homes, single family, condos, everything. Right. We know what we need. How do we get there? And what's it going to cost? And who has to come to the table to make that happen? And where can we get by this date? And where can we get by this date? And where can we get by this date? There is a study out there from Tulsa, Oklahoma that is very comprehensive. And as I was reading through that, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what we need. We need to get all the players around the table, from those who are in social services for some of the agencies, the boots on the ground, the soldiers, and then the developers and the builders and the landlords and the tenants. Get everybody together to say, how do we solve this? And it'll take maybe a year to put together the plan, but I think it can be done.
Let's talk about a similar topic, but in regard to also getting the groups together, and that's the housing ordinance that is on the ballot that's being proposed by Q Ryle. You have said, I'm not sure this is the right thing at the right time. What would you change about what they're doing that would make it more palatable to you to address the safe and livable housing issue in Quincy?
To me, it's real simple. Before we look at anything like that, the city has to enforce the rules on the books. So I think it's up to the city to take action and to make it work. I've met with previous inspectors. I've met with inspectors in other cities. I think Michael Seaver has some great ideas, and maybe he just hasn't been allowed to use them and implement them. So I want to work with him and figure out, okay, what's the piece that's missing in the enforcement? Is it legal? Is it we don't have judges that will pursue it? I know being in Illinois favors the tenants. That's okay. We can still take action.
Right.
And I think we can still make some things happen. Instead of penalizing all of the good landlords with extra paperwork, and even though it's only $33 a year, it's still, if you own 50 units, it adds up fast. So instead of doing that first, let's take care of enforcing and getting the bad landlords out of the system.
Gotcha.
That has to be step one.
When you're out, not necessarily campaigning, but you go to the grocery store, you're at a ball game or whatever, what do people say to you?
Hi, how you doing? How's your mom?
But they don't. Do they get into the political aspect of this at first,
No.
or typically not?
No. Usually it's how your mom, because my mom just turned 90 this week,
Mm-hmm.
and my mom, I think, knows half of Quincy.
Of course she
So
does.
that's usually the first question they ask, Then if they don't ask that, then it's, oh, how's your brother? So, yeah.
If you're back here in 4 years, sitting in this seat, we're doing the same thing again, what would you like to think that you had accomplished in your term?
Implemented a strategic housing plan that's going to get us where we need to be, and progress shown towards that. Continued working with our local businesses. I think we have a lot of local small businesses that are wonderful. We need to promote those more. And so that part of our world will be thriving. I think we will have new industrial opportunities and new manufacturing opportunities potentially in the next years. Not something that the mayor's office makes happen alone. There's a lot of organizations and a lot of people. We have some good developers in this town that I think we haven't tapped, or maybe we just haven't given them the right incentives, to work with them. And we should incentivize local.
Sure.
The more money we can keep here locally, the better. I think I would want to be talking about how we have a balanced budget model that is sustainable, that we have not raised taxes in 4 years, maybe even that we have found a way to work with all of the governing bodies that are on our tax bill to lower our overall tax bill. And if we could find efficiencies across units, it's a novel concept for the city and county to work together. But guess what? The city and the county are operating the same space. Right. Why shouldn't we be working together? So all of those things are what we'd be talking about. Right, and if we aren't talking about them, I shouldn't be here.
Okay. Well, now we're going to wrap up with what I'm going to call this the lightning round.
Okay.
And we want this. We've read all the letters and the comments, and there've been a lot of drama and vitriol or whatever you want to talk about. I want to have a little fun.
Okay.
Right, so here we go. Quick lightning round. What never fails to make you laugh?
Oh, comics.
As in like comedians?
No.
Or the comics page?
The comics page.
I haven't looked at the comics page in I can't remember how long.
I used to love them, and there's always a laugh there. Today, probably the one who really makes me laugh even more, Ron Upper. He's a fellow Kiwanian.
Okay.
And he always brings the best internet jokes. I don't know where he gets them, but he could be a stand-up comedian just reading them.
Okay. Now I figured I also have to participate to make this fair. So anyway, what I had written down was, do you remember the Ladies' Man on Saturday Night Live with Tim Meadows? And he would sit back in a chair and he would say the word Quavathier. Whenever Bob says Quavathier and he does his Andrew Dice Clay impersonations, I laugh hysterically.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Okay.
Now, your mom's still around, so you have to be careful about this. I wouldn't want her to get in too much trouble. Name something you did in high school that you never told your parents about.
Can I plead the fifth?
Mom, turn the camera off. Stop the video, Mom. All right. I said, I went to St. Louis with my girlfriend at the time, who became my wife, who I had 3 kids with. But I told my parents I was going to see my aunt, and instead we ended up at a hotel for the weekend. They didn't know.
See, now I would say what's something your mother did in high school that you didn't do.
Okay.
Because she got married 2 months after she graduated from high school.
Oh, well, hello.
And I said, that's something I will never do.
Come on,
I will
Mom.
not get married 2 months after high school. I'm going to college.
All right, fair enough.
So I might have had to tell her, well, I'll go to get my MRS. But, yeah.
All right. What do you say when you really want to swear, but you're around a bunch of little kids?
Fudge.
Okay.
Or fudge.
Okay.
Holy cheesecake.
Very nice. Now, that's one I've never heard.
Yep.
Mine is in respect of my dad. It was Dag Nabbit.
That's a good one.
Dag Nabbit is an
Dag
old.
Nabbit is a very good one.
That's an old one from.
That's
over
our generation.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right. What do you spend too much of your own money on?
Clothes.
Oh really?
Oh yeah.
You're a clothes hound?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
I love clothes. I could get a new outfit every day.
All right. Fair enough. Mine is not what I spend it on every day, but what I just spend it on. I bought my own hot tub. And I spent more money than I wanted to, but I'm really happy that I did it. All right. What do you do when you can't sleep at night?
I usually get up, turn on the TV, flip through some channels. There's always something good on MeTV.
MeTV. We're going way back then. I get in the hot tub.
Very good.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, I also spend too much money. I hope to spend too much money on my grandson, but I haven't had the chance yet. He can't do a whole lot yet. He wants to talk and he wants to grab things, but he just hasn't quite figured out how to do those things yet. We're going to work on that, though.
There's a good thing there's no Disney store close by.
Oh, Oh, yeah.
Because I can never get out of there without spending a whole lot of zeros.
I did that a lot with my own
yeah.
with my own girls.
Yeah.
When you're in the car, what song makes you automatically sing along when you hear it on the radio?
Oh, wow. Almost any country song.
Really? You're a country singer.
I know.
Like Winona? Dolly?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No. The new country.
Oh, okay.
The Y2K and forward country, yeah.
All right.
You know, Blake Shelton, Carrie Underwood.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
All right. I said September by Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yeah,
I've always liked that song. All right, last one.
Yeah.
Something that you hate that everyone else likes. And I'm gonna give you mine, and you're gonna go, what? I wrote down going to the beach. Very overrated.
Oh, I could say that
okay.
easily. Oh, yeah.
I thought for sure by living in San Diego, you would have loved to have gone to the beach.
I lived on the beach, you know, and walking on the beach, playing volleyball on the beach, those kind of things I enjoy. Laying on the beach to get a suntan, really, you have nothing better to do with your time.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So I've never really been a beach bum person.
Okay.
I like the setting of the beach. I'd love to have a house on a beach, you know, just because of the weather, and I love seeing the ocean. You know, there's just something about hearing the ocean water that's very calming.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate you for playing along.
Thank you.
And best
This
of
has
luck.
been fun. Thank you.
Best of luck on
Thank you.
Tuesday. And
I
be sure to
appreciate
get
it.
out and vote Tuesday, Election Day. This is David Adam from Muddy River News. Thank you very much.
Thank you.